Newsflash, gut health is not eating a bunch of fermented foods. It's about giving your body what it needs to create its own good, healthy gut microbiome. Hey, fun fact, you've probably only seen me from the waist up in most of my videos. I do actually have legs, but the cat's out of the bag. I have no style whatsoever. But in all seriousness, I am proud to announce this 1-week gut health challenge. And this came to mind a couple weeks ago when I'm like, you know what, I could use a gut reset. I do all these different things. I try, experiment all the time, but sometimes I feel like my gut's in a little bit dysbiosis, and there's no real viable way to kind of test your own gut microbiome without going into like a crazy laboratory setting. But we do know what can at least improve diversity and help us out. So this is a 1-week challenge. I invite you to do it with me. Let's have some fun and let's really make it happen. There's a downloadable PDF version of this as well that includes some of the recipes that go along with it. So that link is down below. Also, one of the things that I highly recommend you get for this 1-week gut health challenge is going to be a probiotic down below called Seed. They sponsor a lot of content on this channel. They're great. They are a synbiotic, so they have a prebiotic and a probiotic in one. It's a capsule inside of a capsule. I did structure a time within this protocol to take your probiotics. If you don't take Seed, it's not the end of the world. I just recommend that one. It's the one that I lean into. Plus, there's a 15% off link down below in the description. So you just use that link and use that code Thomas15 will save you 15% off of Seed Synbiotic. So it's a daily synbiotic, but it's going to help you out kind of establishing with this as well. So let's dive in. So here's what we have. 1 week of doing 1 day on, 1 day off, fasting, not fasting. Not necessarily an alternate day fasting approach per se, but what we're doing is we have a reason behind it. The fasting days, when you fast, you have faster clearing of pathogenic bacteria. There have been studies that have demonstrated that subjects that have like salmonella or E. coli within their gut, when they are fasting, pathogenic bacteria leave faster. So the salmonella would leave faster. Now, I'm not saying that you have salmonella. I'm saying that if you have bacteria that are gram-negative or sometimes bad, a lot of times fasting actually flushes them out faster because the good bacteria tend to live a little bit longer. But it's not always a battle between good and bad bacteria. If you've seen my videos before, you know it's about diversity. It's the best way in the world of the microbiome research, which is so embryonic and a world that we don't know much about. It's much safer to say, hey, the more diverse, the better, because that means you have the ability to be flexible and adjust where your body needs to adjust, because it will. Okay, but another thing, on the fasting days, you have a big improvement of immunoglobulin A, or I shouldn't say improvement, but increase in immunoglobulin A. What this is going to do is it's going to force sort of the rebuilding of the gut mucosal layer. And you see people that do gut health diets and stuff like that, and they're not incorporating fasting in, and fasting is one of the best ways to sort of recalibrate before you add the different foods in. The stress of fasting actually adjusts that IgA a little bit. Then there's something called the microbiota fat axis. There have been studies that have been demonstrated that when the microbiome becomes more diverse and certain microbes change and fluctuate, that it can actually have a signaling process that allows us to have more brown fat. So yes, in an effort to actually improve our gut, we can actually improve our glucose tolerance and actually potentially improve our fatty acid oxidation and also improve the ratio of brown fat to white fat. Brown fat is the fat that just burns heat at rest, burns calories, right? The last meal prior to a fast has a much more pronounced effect on your gut microbiome, okay? Because normally when you eat something, a couple hours later, you're gonna eat again. And what ends up happening is you have this constant battling. So let's say, for example, you ate broccoli at one meal and that fed a bunch of bacteria. But then 5 hours later, 3 hours later, you eat a bunch of, let's just say flax. And that's feeding a bunch of different kind of bacteria. So now all of a sudden you have this conflicting war of bacteria, right? But when we rotate and we change the foods that we go into a fast with, we allow the opportunity for those foods to really feed the microbiome for an extended period of time. So if I ate a bunch of, again, hypothetically, flax right now and then fasted for 24 hours, it's a stretch, but theoretically, 24 hours of not eating is going to allow that flax to really feed a very specific subset of my microbiome. So then we have the non-fasting day. Basically, we're taking a day to build up again with introducing these foods before we fast again. Expect about a 2-day adjustment of feeling a little bit bloated and stuff like that. Let's jump in. Here's what the fasting day looks like. You're gonna start your morning with apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons in water, along with a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Nothing else in this case. We want cinnamon because what's gonna happen is studies have demonstrated that cinnamon can also increase that immunoglobulin A, that gut IgA, to help build the mucosal layer. Throughout your fast, during this time, it's 1 week, you can deal with it. I would really like for you to not have coffee. Not that coffee is bad for the gut, but sometimes the acid can cause a little bit more of some just discomfort. And when we're trying to recalibrate, if we go with green tea, there are some studies that demonstrate that green tea can help restore the damaged villi. Those are like the finger-like things in your gut that increase the surface area so you can absorb more things. Well, what happens is during a fast, you have this atrophy of the villi. Now, when you have green tea, it preserves so you don't have that same atrophy. We don't want the gut villi to lose or to atrophy, because then we're going to end up losing surface area that we would absorb nutrients with. You're gonna fast for about 20 hours or as long as you comfortably can. Some people are going to say, well, I can fast for a long time. Can I just fast throughout the whole day? For the sake of this challenge, I would prefer that you don't, because I want you to be able to get the benefit of what we're going to be eating after the fast. So let's move into that. Normally, you do not want to take probiotics with food. Okay, you take probiotics about 30 minutes before food, because what happens is once the digestion starts, the hydrochloric acid really kicks up in gear, well then that's going to break down the probiotic and it's going to kill a lot of the microbes. So we don't really want to do that. Bone broth 30 minutes prior to breaking your fast, we're going to do, because that's going to sort of coat the gut and actually help when we do bring the food in. I am absolutely okay with you having your probiotic along with your bone broth. That would be a good time to do it because you're not stimulating a lot of gastric juices. Bone broth moves right through, not a lot of HCl elevating. So it's a good time to have your probiotic. That way you're going to 30 minutes later have your actual meal, which we'll talk about in a second, your break fast meal. So 30 minutes later, you're gonna have a little bit more of the gut bacteria or the probiotic doing its job, okay? The prebiotics and the probiotic have kind of planted where they need to go. Again, this is where I would recommend using the seed. They're a big sponsor of this challenge, of this channel, so it's great. We're doing this for gut health awareness anyway, so that link's down below. So then when you do break your fast, again, maybe it's 19 hours, 20, 22 hours, whatever. There's a couple things I just need to make sure you avoid. Okay, I would prefer, it's 1 week, please, you can do it, but I would prefer, no matter what, no glucose, no fructose, and no saturated fat right when you break your fast. Saturated fat is actually really hard on the gut after a fast. It can actually stimulate lipopolysaccharides to leach through, and that's exactly just doing what we don't want. Okay, we don't want to break apart and kind of decrease the permeability, or increase the permeability, I should say, of the gut wall. Okay, so we want to do what we can to keep that minimal. So do eat right when you break your fast. Lean protein, some fish, preferably something that's high in vitamin D, like maybe some sardines, some mackerel, something like that, and also high in omega-3s. You probably say, Thomas, you usually say break your fast with very low fat. Yes, that is still true. Okay, no more than 6 ounces of protein, no matter what your size. If you're bigger, you're probably on the 6 ounce side. If you're smaller, on the 3 ounce. What I'm not gonna do with this gut health challenge is give you your calories, because there's gonna be places here where you can modulate how much protein, how much fat you have. I'm more paying attention to what foods we are eating, because I'm talking to people that are going to be 90 pounds, talking to people that are 500 pounds. It's going to range, right? So no more than 15 grams of fat, which goes against the grain of my normal fat loss strategy, intermittent fasting thing. But in this particular case, for 1 week, I'm okay with it because we're getting mainly omega-3 fats. The fats that I want coming in are going to be strictly coming from, like, again, sardines, mackerel, some lean salmon, lean sockeye salmon, the more red stuff that doesn't have the thick marbling. You're talking 10, 15 grams of fat in a 6 ounce filet. That's perfect. The omega-3s actually stimulate some of the gut response that we want here. Plus, the anti-inflammatory effect can modulate some of the inflammation that comes in after we break a fast, allowing us to potentially heal that gut a little bit faster. Okay, then about 60 minutes later, you're going to have a larger meal, okay? And that larger meal is this chickpea artichoke salad, and I'm gonna spare you the details of the time in this video. It's in the description and it's in the PDF. If you make this, make it in the quantity that is in the recipe. The thing that you can add more or less of to modulate how much calories you have is going to be adding in more chicken to it. You can add chicken to it. Within this, you're topping it with chicken. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you don't have to do the chicken. I would say, again, more chicken, more protein if you're bigger. I would probably do it. I'm about 185 pounds. I would probably do like 9 or 10 ounces. So I would do a good amount. Again, that's where you can go as much as you feel comfortable. And then there's also some olive oil and some avocado and stuff that's in that. So if you wanted to add more calories, you could add more oil. I'm not worried about that, okay? So no big deal. If you don't like artichokes, you can swap for asparagus. It's that long chain inulin that we're after. That long chain inulin drives short chain fatty acid production. What we're doing here is we're not trying to be like, let's implant a bunch of bacteria into our gut. No, we are trying to give our body what it needs to adjust our microbiome so then it can adjust itself and create more diversity. If you had a bunch of sauerkraut and kimchi, although that stuff's good, it's not going to come here and fix the problem. We need to go in with the fiber route and with the right kind of fats, which we'll talk about in a minute too. Okay? Then a hard stop after that meal. No consumption. Okay? You need to go to bed immediately, but you need to wait a little bit, go to bed, don't eat anything until the next morning. The next morning is your non-fasting day. Okay? 1 day on, 1 day off. Non-fasting day is still going to start the day with ACV and cinnamon. 2 tablespoons ACV plus a half to a quarter teaspoon, whatever you want, of cinnamon. Then your breakfast. By the way, I would recommend still working out in a fasted state, but this isn't a fat loss plan, so let's not go down that rabbit hole. Greek yogurt, if you can't do dairy, coconut yogurt is really great too. It's the one time I'm like, let's go ahead and have some probiotic rich food in here, just because it's a good time of day to have it. Cinnamon added to your yogurt because we want more of the prebiotic, but we also want more of that IgA response. Now you're gonna do 1 tablespoon of each chia and 1 tablespoon of flax, okay? Different forms of soluble fiber. Soluble fiber has that gelatinous-like texture when it gets water in it. So when you get flax and chia in your gut, it's going to draw water into the colon, it's going to draw water into the gut, and it's going to allow it to ferment, okay? So what we are looking for is these fermentable foods that ferment in our gut and allow the actual short-chain fatty acids to be produced. That's going to recalibrate what we want here. How much Greek yogurt? This is where, again, it's going to come up to you depending on calories. I would recommend you go with like a fuller fat yogurt so you get the conjugated linoleic acid in there, so like a 2% or a 5% Greek yogurt. Use your judgment on what appropriate calories is for you at that rate. Now, next up, five or so hours later, you're gonna have lunch, but prior to that 30 minutes is when you're going to take your probiotic again. Okay, I want you to take your seed probiotic or whatever probiotic you're using 30 minutes prior to lunch. Then with lunch, a little bit of an interesting kind of compound here, but it's actually delicious, okay? So you're gonna go 1 cup of spaghetti squash. If you don't like spaghetti squash, you can use 1 cup of chopped zucchini, 1 cup of chopped crookneck squash. Again, specific soluble fibers. You know how those get kind of slimy? Okay, that's kind of what's going on here. Now, another thing that you want to add that I didn't write in here, but editing note, go ahead and add it in there. So you're gonna see pop up on the screen. You can also add mushrooms, a 1/4 cup of chopped cremini mushrooms. And if you want to really take it a step further, if you're in severe gut dysbiosis, you can even add a 1/4 cup of raw oats and kind of mix it into this, but gluten-free oats. The oats sounds like it's going to taste weird, but it doesn't. It actually mixes pretty good. But the mushrooms go in really in line with the squash. And we're doing that for beta glucans. Beta glucans are glucose molecules, like thousands of glucose molecules bound together in one particular compound that cannot get broken down by our body. We lack the enzyme. So when it gets into our gut bacteria break it down, never turning it into glucose, but turning it into a massive amount of fuel and food for our bacteria and ultimately generating those short chain fatty acids. Okay, so add that into the mix. Chicken is optional, again, however much you want. 5 ounces, 6 ounces, 10 ounces, no more than 12 if you're a big person. All right, 8 stalks of asparagus, again, for that long chain inulin. Okay, cut it up. 1 avocado and 2 cloves of garlic plus 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. You mix that all up, it actually tastes pretty good. You're making kind of a sauce, you're making kind of like an olive oil. You can heat it up, you can have it cold, whatever. If you do have the spaghetti squash, if you have it cold, it's going to turn into what's called a resistant starch, which is okay. But just know that if you are someone that is just mildly adjusting your gut, you may want to keep it warm. If you feel like you need a major change, then you can go ahead and you can make it cold, because when you heat it and then you cool it, it becomes, again, what's called a resistant starch, which changes from an RS1, RS2 strategy to how it affects your gut microbiome. Okay, then any snacks in between, which I strongly discourage you. I really want you to improve that gut motility where you have breaks in between your food. But flax crackers, some cucumber and tahini, hazelnuts. Hazelnuts are the only nut that is rich in soluble fiber, fun fact, and dark chocolate that is unsweetened. And lastly, how do you like my knees? We have for dinner, shirataki noodles. Okay, shirataki noodles are those miracle noodles. Okay, and that is a specific kind of fiber called glucomannan fiber. Okay, I can't remember what it is, but it's like 1 gram of glucomannan fiber holds like it's like 3 or 5 grams of water. It's crazy. It might even be more than that. It's a huge soluble fiber. Very, very beneficial, especially since you're going to be going into your fast the next day. So then you have 1 tablespoon of ghee, okay? And I want you can actually add more ghee, I should say here. Like if you're a bigger unit, add more ghee because this is where you're getting more calories in. The reason I want ghee over coconut oil, over any other fat in this case, ghee is high in butyrate, butyric acid. Short chain fatty acids, one of them is butyrate. So we are directly feeding the epithelial layer of the gut. We are feeding those epithelial cells. Exactly what they eat is butyrate. We have 3 primary, we have acetate, butyrate, and propionate, okay? Those are the big short chain fatty acids that we hear a lot about. We're giving ourselves one with ghee. It's really phenomenal stuff. So take that ghee, cook up some cauliflower florets or cauliflower rice, cook it up in that ghee, the ghee can handle high temperature. And then you're gonna go ahead and you're going to simmer in some bone broth along with that ghee. Okay, so cauliflower, bone broth, you can add some spices, thyme, sage, oregano, a little bit of cayenne, some cinnamon, whatever you want, and get that kind of nice flavor going, and then add the shirataki noodles into it. Okay, then garlic and onion added into it, and then of course, whatever chicken or fish you'd want. You notice we're not doing a lot of red meat here, and that's just because some of the new 5-GC and some of the other compounds in meat can trigger an inflammatory response, and if we're trying to reset, period. Okay, so chicken, however much you need to have. And then there's a lemony yogurt sauce if you want to put on it. Again, take a little bit of lemon, take a little bit of yogurt, squeeze some lemon juice in the yogurt, add some lemon zest, and add a little bit of salt and just make kind of a sauce that goes on top of it. It tastes really, really good. It kind of comes off like almost like a stroganoff in a way. So that's going to be your last meal. Okay, you're going to have that. And then the only other optional thing if you are in severe gut dysbiosis, this sounds wild, but right after this meal, you're gonna have, this sounds so crazy, a half of an unripe banana, okay? You can even start with a quarter. Okay, and what that is that's basically, you've probably heard of something called green banana flour, which you could buy on Amazon too. Green banana flour is as far of a resistant starch as you can get. Okay, we do not have a lot of the microbes to break it down, so our body builds it up, and it causes this massive kind of change in our gut biome. So you notice you get bloated. So maybe try with a quarter or a half of a green banana, because then you're gonna go into your fast and it's going to allow you to feed throughout that 24-hour period of time. Okay, so I will check in with you over the course of the week, but I want you to share your results. I'll also put a link down to like my Facebook group so you can continue to kind of post things in there and kind of have some community with it. Remember, there's a downloadable PDF, and remember the seed probiotic, 15% off using that link down below. I'll see you tomorrow.